Are you thinking about installing a motor on your kayak? You need to get a little bit farther away from that launch to get away from pressure? Well, I've got a treat for you today. I've got Homan Nikmanesh, the founder of the Bixpy propulsion system, which is a popular addition to kayaks of all shapes and sizes, with me today, and we're going to ask a few questions. Homan, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, Steve. It's really nice to be on the show. Thanks for having me on.
It's my understanding that you have a pretty interesting background story from 2014 on what motivated you to invent the Bixby and get into this industry. Can you share that with the crowd?
Yeah, sure thing, Steve. So I was out there with a friend of mine fishing off the coast of San Diego, and we were in our Hobie sailboat. On the way back, we discovered we had no wind behind us, so we had to pedal back our Hobie tandem island, and we sort of made a commitment that we're going to motorize the kayak for the next time we go out. And I discovered very quickly that there weren't really good options for motorizing that kayak, and in fact there were no real options out there aside from doing some heavy duty DIY and carrying a big lead acid battery and so on. And at the same time I was playing with brushless motors and lithium batteries, trying to sort of get into the world of e-bikes and drones and so on. So I had done some work on those, and I decided to take that technology and basically put it into a motor for small watercraft, personal watercraft, things that are normally harder to motorize. And that's how it started really in 2000. I think it was the summer of 2014 is when we were on that trip, and that's when the idea came to us. And about 3 years later is when we had the first product out in the market. So so that's the backstory essentially of Bixpy.
I noticed that you put out the first version of the product back in 2017. That's 5 years ago. You must have learned a lot in terms of feedback from kayak anglers that you've rolled into the current product. Can you share a few of those lessons learned with us?
Sure thing, Steve. Yeah, we've learned a lot. The biggest thing I've learned is that bringing a product to life from the first idea to actually bring that product to life is much harder than you would ever imagine. Especially when you try and do something like we did, where we took electronics and put it into salt water. So we've learned about how to deal with sealing and material science and a whole gamut of things that I really knew very little about. And I either had to bring obviously people on board to help with the product, or I had to learn. And we have a small team, so we all sort of had to go outside of our comfort zone and learn things that really we had very little expertise on. So and we've learned from our end users. We've had a lot of feedback on to what they want, how they want to see things. The one thing we didn't have is we didn't have anyone to sort of follow. So we sort of had to make a lot of things from scratch, and we were really in uncharted territory in a sense. But we learned the material science, we learned what not to do, we learned what our users want, we learned what works well. We also had to learn how things work in different types of water, rivers, lakes, ocean. So all of that was quite a learning process. Meanwhile, we were trying to motorize things that weren't really designed to be motorized. So then we had to learn how all of these manufacturers build kayaks and small watercraft, and how to best get around ways to finding good methods of motorizing these things without doing too much damage to them, with doing minimal modifications, and offering something that's plug and play and easy to use. So yeah, we've learned a lot. We've learned quite a bit. So,
can you summarize the key performance characteristics of the motor? What's the thrust? What's the top speed on, say, a 100-pound kayak? How about the battery? How long is that good for if you're running it full time?
So the key feature to our motors is really the small size. So unlike conventional motors that have a huge propeller and create a lot of drag and are sort of an additional burden to carry with you, if you will, we started out building a motor that was specifically designed for personal watercraft. So what we had in mind is, we want to build a motor that when it's not in use, because you're putting it on a device that's mainly powered by a person. So we wanted to build a motor that when it's not in use, it's not a drag. So we really wanted to build the smallest motor possible. So that's the number one goal that drove us, is to make the smallest, least impactful product we can. From there, we sort of sat and tried to figure out how much thrust you need to move an average kayak. Kayaks and paddleboards and small watercraft all have very low haul speeds. There are somewhere between 4 to 5 miles an hour. Some of the very sleek performance models get up to 6-7 miles an hour maybe, but most of them end up somewhere in that 4 to 5 mile range. So if you have a 100-pound kayak, let's say like a Hobie Outback or a Vibe Shearwater or something, these are kayaks, especially the fishing kayaks, they top off at about 4 to 5 miles an hour. No matter how big a motor you put on them. If you put a very, very large motor on them, obviously it'll go a little bit faster because you're lifting the kayak out of the water. But for most kayaks, you're topping off between 4 to 5 miles an hour. So we started with that, and what we found is that it takes about 30 to 40 pounds of thrust to push a kayak at its optimal speed. And anything beyond that, you'd have to put a really large motor on the kayak, and then you have to carry a very large battery. So we sort of optimized, and because we're in control of our full product, from battery to motor to propeller to everything, we were able to basically fine-tune the smallest possible motor, which became our J1 motor, and that motor weighed about 2 pounds. And that motor was putting out about 32 pounds or 33 pounds of thrust. And we combined that with our then 333 watt hour battery. And that battery was running that motor at full power for just about an hour. Right now we have a slightly larger battery at 378 watt hours that runs it for just over an hour. We also offer a much larger battery now that we just released in February of 2023. And that battery runs the motor for over 2 hours at full speed and about 24 hours of trolling speed. So that's more designed for the anglers who are out there for a whole day and they want to be out there fishing all day and not worrying about their battery. It is a little heavier, obviously, but we optimized everything to work for a personal watercraft. So we started from that, and that's the main sort of selling feature of our product.
Let's move over to installation. Is this something that a do-it-yourself kayaker could install under a shade tree in the backyard? What's the typical installation like, and does it depend on how and where you're going to install it?
So that's definitely my favorite question, is when it comes to installing our motor on different watercraft. And that's one thing we have spent a lot of time focusing on, because without being able to install it on your favorite watercraft, there's really not much point to our motors. And we have right now, I think, close to 20 adapters, and we have 3 more adapters coming out in the next few months. And our goal is to create a way where you can take our product out of a box and within minutes you can be on the water. So no drilling, no running wires and cables and chains and so on. So you're out of the box, on the water, hopefully under a minute or 2. And right now we offer enough adapters to be able to do that on probably close to 800 to 900 different models of kayaks and paddleboards. And we're very proud of that. And that's our big selling feature, if you will, is that this motor is so small and so tiny and so light that you're able to do that on many different platforms. As that motor gets bigger, you aren't able to do that. So you're not able to put a 22-pound motor on the fin box of a paddleboard. Whereas when the motor is only about 2 pounds, you can do that. So that's a really big strength of our company, is those adapters and our ability to have that motor adaptable to as many watercraft as possible. So it is something you can definitely do under a shady tree, although you want to do it right by the beach because you want to get in the water. So yeah.
Do you know of any kayak models or brands that the Bixpy will not work on?
So yeah, there are definitely kayaks that are more difficult to adapt a motor to. There's no question about that. We actually have created an entire website dedicated to looking up your kayak and seeing which of our adapters fit that kayak best. It's bixpy.info as opposed to our regular website, which is bixpy.com. Bixpy.info actually lists hundreds of kayaks and paddleboards and other small watercraft, and it matches them to the best adapter we sell. Having said that, there are lots of kayaks out there still that have very narrow backs or very, you know, peculiar shape to their transom or to the front or side or whatever it may be, and it becomes more challenging. So we actually grade some of our installations, and we do have some very complicated DIY adapters we do sell for sort of that hardcore DIY person who wants to sort of take their kayak and have a specialized mounting adapter for it. So we haven't come across a kayak we haven't been able to motorize yet, but some of them definitely do take more effort and more time, and some modification of the kayak for sure as well. So, but we haven't come across a kayak we haven't been able to motorize yet. So, but we'll maybe find one day. Who knows?
I noticed that one of the installation options puts the Bixpy as the rudder. If you do that, can you still steer the kayak if you're not actually using the motor?
The rudder adapter we sell is one of our more popular adapters for sure. Having the motor on the rudder is a really nice option. The steering is incredible when you're under power, obviously. You do lose a little bit of steering when you're not under power, but we've actually accommodated for that with our new K1 motors that we're releasing in 2023. And the K1 motor actually has a built-in fin on top of it. So that adds to the steerability of the rudder adapter and paddle boards and so on as well. So so there is a slight difference, but it's quite minimal. So it's not very noticeable. Plus the motor, like I said, is very small. So that drag coefficient is very, very low. And it doesn't really affect you when you're either paddling or pedaling your kayak. So, and that rudder adapter, like I said, is a very, very popular option to motorize a kayak.
There are some speed demons out there, and people who do want to get a workout. Can you continue to pedal your kayak while the motor is running to get additional speed, or does that mess it up and you shouldn't do that?
So that's a really good question, and it sort of goes back to that idea of a hull speed where you can pedal and paddle while the motor is on and you'll get some additional speed. But like I said, a lot of these kayaks and paddle boards, they do have a limited hull speed. So even if you'll find, for instance, on a pedal drive kayak, you can turn your motor on full speed, and if you start pedaling as hard as you can, you're not going to go much faster. You may get 0.2 miles more an hour, but you're not going much faster than you were if you just left the motor on. So one option that's quite popular is using it as an assist. So you turn your motor on at about 30%, so it's allowing you to cruise for many, many hours on a small battery, and then you pedal or paddle in addition. So you get a bit of a workout, you're not getting exhausted, so you can go much further, plus the battery lasts a lot longer, and you're still reaching that hull speed, give or take half a mile. So that hull speed really determines what you're doing on your kayak. And there are lots of people who ask us, can I put 2 motors on my kayak and will it go faster? And we always tell them, not really. I mean, you can put 2 or 3 motors, but it won't do much for getting the kayak to go and break that hull speed unless you're able to plane the kayak, which typically you wouldn't want to do on a kayak.
What about safety? Is there a kill switch? Are there any issues that an angler would need to be aware of to make sure that they don't hurt themselves using this motor?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's of course a magnetic kill switch that we not only recommend, we require that you wear, because if you do fall off your kayak or paddleboard, that kayak and paddleboard is just going to go nonstop and it's going to get away from you, and it could be a danger to others. And of course, you could be out in the middle of water with nothing. So you got to wear your life vest. You got to wear that kill switch. Our smaller battery floats, our bigger battery doesn't. So strapping your battery to your kayak is crucial, or to your paddleboard. Our propeller is guarded, so you don't have to worry about falling in the water and getting cut by the propeller or injuring other people. So that's a huge safety element of the product. But generally, it's important to wear that kill switch, and that's the number one. Kill switch, life vest, and common sense goes a long way with not just our product, with any product.
Now we need to get to that awkward question of price. Bixpy is at the high end. It's a premium trolling motor. What is the value proposition that you can share with my viewers that justifies the investment?
Yeah, Steve, we're definitely on the, I wouldn't say the highest, obviously. There are more expensive systems out there, but we are a premium product. We put a lot of effort into sourcing quite expensive material for the motor. It is salt and freshwater ready, so maintenance is zero essentially on these motors. And if you start costing it and putting it together, if you were even to buy a cheap trolling motor and you wanted to add a waterproof lithium battery pack to it, you're going to easily work your way over $1,200, which is what we sell, a ready-to-go product out of a box with 20 different adapter options and so on. So, it is a bit of a premium product to buy for sure. There's no question about that. But we feel that given the quality of what we build and what we offer in terms of plug and play and just ease of use and water tightness of all of our products, it's definitely a good investment. It's an easy product to use. So it's an enjoyable addition to your watercraft.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to throw it open to you and let you comment on pretty much anything you want to comment on that would give my viewers a better understanding of the Bixpy.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. So what's really important about our product and how we always try to explain our product is we started out building a product that was purpose suited for kayaks and paddleboards and small watercraft. So we wanted minimal drag. We didn't want an open propeller. We wanted light, small, easy to install, and at a reasonable price. And all of that resulted in us really being laser focused on building the smallest motor we could that we were then able to put on a paddleboard, on a rudder, into the opening of a Mirage drive, for instance, which most motors won't fit into, but yet still have enough power to get that kayak to its hull speed. And all of that at what we believe is a fair price and a fair price point for a product that if you were to put together yourself or look around the market, you won't be able to find really. So that's our goal, and it will remain that way. And we continue to improve the product as technology gets better. Battery technology obviously gets better. We now offer solar charging for our batteries, which is great because it's at a price point where it's affordable. And you're now able to go off with our motor in a backpack, off grid, and essentially kayak or paddleboard an unlimited amount of time and not have to plug in. So it's come a long way, and we look forward to the next few years of making even better products and more exciting products.
Thank you very much. I really learned a lot, and I'm sure my viewers did as well. We all have a greater appreciation of the effort and technology that Bixpy has put into what is a top-end product. Thanks a lot for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Steve, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about Bixpy, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.